Hello everyone, I'm Eric Demeter, and today we're going to continue talking about this such an important topic about finding your calling, finding your purpose in life. With me today are two very special guests. They are both professional career coaches. They do much more than that too. Claire Weber and Ellie Jackson. Claire is the founder and lead HR and career consultant for Clarity Career Solutions, which is an innovative consultancy that helps people from all walks of life create purpose-driven career and professional development strategies. And there's more. She's a certified professional career coach and certified professional resume writer. She's also a strong interest inventory certified practitioner with the Myers-Briggs Company. Wow, you have done quite a lot. And Ellie serves as the lead content strategist and the brand development and social media manager for CCS, and is a certified professional resume writer as well. She joins Claire in helping clients meet their career ambitions and is passionate about making sure clients know that there is a way to navigate their career path. That's great news because so many of us don't know what to do. So that's why we're chatting today. Thank you, Claire and Ellie, for being with me today.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Well, let's just jump into this. Career counseling is something new to me. This idea of calling, finding your purpose in life, is something that I've been going through in the recent past and kind of still figuring things out. And I know it's not just a question for me; it's a question for many. I mean, you guys have a whole consultancy that's based on that. So certainly, lots of people have these questions of purpose and life, and can I combine my passion and a purpose and a paycheck? Really. So, can you just give us an overview about generally how you help people find a career they love?
Ellie, I'll let you speak to this too, but I'll get us kicked off here. We talk to a lot of people who don't know that services like ours exist, but oftentimes when we do work with people, the feedback is generally, how did I not know that this was a thing? I could have used this in high school going into college. I could have used this college going into post-grad. I could have used this throughout all seasons of my life. And so in terms of how we engage with the world and engage with people that need this service, it usually starts by conversations of who are you? And I think a lot of people don't know how to articulate that, or they don't have the confidence, or maybe they have some limiting beliefs that prevent them from seeing how awesome they are. So oftentimes we start there, and then from there, look at the whole person approach of, we're talking about careers more specifically, but that bumps against so many different other areas in their lives, like faith and family and finances and where you live and how you get to work. Do you work from home? What does your schedule flexibility look like, right? And so we are not counselors by trade. We're not necessarily dissecting all of those areas, but we are touching on careers, which we view as a whole person approach. So, Ellie, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, you answered it beautifully. I mean, I get to do the same thing Claire does in just different ways, and she's gotten to lead me through a lot of the processes for that, which has been cool. But I think really coming back to what you said about conversation, I think that's the biggest piece, whether it's a conversation with us, with our clients on, what are your passions? What are your skills? Whether that's face-to-face with us or screen-to-screen or over the phone or even through email, or even we just recommend that clients and career seekers have those conversations with themselves, with their loved ones. What am I good at? What are my skills? What's important to me? What are our finances? Our financial situations, and how will that affect, the job search and what really I want to do? Can I do multiple jobs? Is there a way to navigate that? And really just, I think for us getting to hear from clients' own mouths, what they do, what they love to do, I think that's transformational in the process as they apply to jobs and look for jobs and navigate their career journey.
That's great. I love this idea about the whole person.
Yeah.
That career is just one thing, but it obviously affects your lifestyle and your family, and faith and everything. I mean, we're not going to do much. Career is something that we're going to be spending a lot of time on it in life. Like they say that you're going to work about 80,000 hours. So it is good to at least do something that you like. I don't know. I don't know if love is too high of a bar, but I think that everyone, at least in Western culture, can find a job that they like. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
I think Ellie, you can go first.
Oh, I mean,
I
I just think that's something that I grew up hearing a lot of is, if you like your job, you probably aren't working hard enough, because jobs can be miserable. And, if you if you're enjoying work, then it's not work. And I think that with every job and with everything you do, whether it's, working 60 plus hours a week or you stay at home, but there's part of work that is work and is not as enjoyable. But I don't think it all has to be miserable. And I think that that's the conversation I've heard a little bit in just my own circle of, working hard doesn't mean miserable. You can enjoy what you do. And I think with everything, there are parts that aren't enjoyable. There's, whether that's the paperwork or the commute or, the first 20 hours of your 40-hour week, there's parts that aren't enjoyable. But I think Claire and I are both firm believers that you're allowed to enjoy your job and you're allowed to enjoy your work.
Yes.
And I've had to learn that a little bit. And there's a way to also add the financial aspect to that and make money doing something you enjoy.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree, Ellie. I think the only thing that I would add to, we tell our clients a lot of times there is this kind of continuum. I think that especially if you're in a position that you don't love or you're in an environment that you don't love, it's so easy to have a grass is always greener mentality. And we certainly don't preach that. But I do think that looking at it as a scale, right? Are you mostly filled and sometimes drained, or are you mostly drained and only sometimes fulfilled? And if you feel like you can't get that fulfilled weight of the scale up higher than the drained, you're likely not operating within your sweet spot. We are called to work, and we're called to work hard. And I think especially as believers, we understand the implications of that. But I also think that we've been gifted with certain talents and skill sets that are vitally important to our communities and to our families and to even ourselves that God's equipped us with to say, go do a whole lot more of that, right? You are innately gifted or you have upskilled in this area, go chase a lot more. And I think sometimes that work becomes more of the joy, right? And so that's something to build on what Ellie said as well, is that where are you on your continuum? Are you feeling completely just utterly drained? Probably not operating in your sweet spot. Life is not always better. Grass is not always greener within the dream job. But if you're mostly going to sleep at night, tired, fulfilled, you've done some good work and contributed, you're probably operating somewhere closer to that realm of sweet spot.
Yeah, and wouldn't you say that different people need different things? Some people like me, I try to do I want to combine my gifts, my skills, my passions, and find this amazing job. It's kind of like this peak of the mountain. To use all the gifts that God's given me and try to make a living doing it. I think that that's one extreme, and probably other people would be satisfied with, I just want to wake up and not hate going to work in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where the conversation piece that we were talking about a little bit comes in, of even just asking yourself those questions. Even within, again, my circle of friends, I have some that need structure. They need a 9 to 5. I have to be there at 9 and I can't leave really before 5. Whereas I operate more I'm more self-motivated in my hours. Sometimes I'm really motivated at 10 p.m. And that's how I operate a little bit better. And so just asking yourself those questions of, and for me in my own story, learning to ask myself those questions. How do I operate best? And how can I apply that to my career? So yeah.
Ellie, I want to go back to what you were saying earlier about this mentality that some people think, maybe it was inculcated in you to that work is miserable. Where do you think? Because I don't know if I got that growing up, but I just thought, like a job was just a job, and there was no process defining like something you enjoy doing. So where do you both think that this mentality that it's the norm that you should be miserable at your work?
I hope that's not everybody's norm. I think
that's the other extreme.
Yes, I hope that not everybody thinks that. And if you do, then that's not the truth. But
give us a call.
Yeah, seriously.
Right.
I hope that not everyone thinks that. I think that I had a few people in my life who work really, really hard, and it's more about the paycheck than it is about my work is fulfilling. And there is that balance of sometimes you're in a financial situation where you have to pick up jobs or do something that isn't necessarily fulfilling, but you have to kind of get through a season in your life. And I think that's true, but I also I had conversations with people who are like, well, work is work. It doesn't define who I am. It doesn't, Monday through Friday I'm working, but then I live for the weekends, and that's a completely different thing. That's when I can enjoy myself. And I think there are elements to truth in that. Of Monday through Friday, a lot of people are on the clock and they are working, and there are, there's a reason we get paid a lot of times for work, because, not all of it we would do for free. But I think finding the balance of, it doesn't mean that you're, working harder, or that's not where you have to be. You're not stuck in that. And if your financial situation gives you the opportunity to, have that flexibility to find something, I think that's really important. And I think that if that is a belief that I've seen in my circle of friends and family, of just showing them that there are ways to not be miserable and still make the financial needs work. And there might be seasons and changes that happen over time, but we're all, like Claire talked about, we're all given gifts, and we're born with passions and skills that are different from other people. And there's such a reason for that. And I think there's a way to not necessarily your work is your purpose and that's it. And, Monday through Friday, you're living out your purpose, but on the weekends you're not. They don't have to be so separate. But also this balance of work can be enjoyable, and you can find opportunities to use your skills and passions to further, whatever mission it is. Whether that means furthering your mission of connecting with people because you work at a coffee shop and you're a barista and you talk to people, or maybe you're writing code and that's how you fulfill that mission because those are your skills. But I think there is a balance, and that's something I've had conversations about with my circle.
Ellie, I don't know if you would see the same, or Eric, if you've seen this in your space. I think that this idea of work, and especially work to the extreme end, is also a westernized perspective, because when you talk with other people from other countries or with different backgrounds, that isn't always the case. I think that at least in the West, there's almost some sort of badge of honor when you're like, yeah, I worked my 80 hours this week and didn't have time for anything and didn't sleep, and and at it next week. And obviously, we know that cycle doesn't work. Long term, our bodies are not meant to, and our brains are not meant to keep up that cadence, right? But I do think that when you're in it, the fear of making a transition, and we may talk about this later, but the fear of making a transition to something that's unknown or to something with more balance, it can throw you off kilter, right? Because if you're finding and tying your purpose and your value to productivity, quote unquote, of 80 hours a week, or these crazy work kind of schedules and work-life balance, it's really detrimental. And so I wonder if that's a part of that too, just kind of this Western mentality on what work looks like, what should work look like, internal, external pressures just to work yourself to the bone, when maybe that works for some really high capacity, low sleep needing humans. But I don't think most of us are in that category, right? I think that there's balance to help us cultivate passions and fulfillment outside of the office that is cyclical, right? Our outside identity, commitments, places that we really find value helps fuel work. We're able to have that fulfillment at work too, which fuels those other things. And so that's something that we try to help break down with clients in those conversations Ellie mentioned of, like, what does your current ecosystem look like? And how do we help create balance in that with a kind of like a fine tooth comb, just hard to do on your own.
Yeah, I think in this culture, there's this huge pressure, and it becomes part of your identity how much you work. On one hand, work is definitely part of who we are, but it's definitely not the main thing. And if you're working for years on end at 60 hours a week, I would tend to think that you're maybe trying to run away from something,
Yeah.
But, and this thing about staying busy. I have this thing in one side of my family where it's almost like a badge of honor, like what you were saying, that it's like, oh, I'm busy. Well, I'm busy too. Well, and somehow if you're not busy, you're not okay. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. Just back to this whole balance things that we have many parts of life other than work. But I want to dive into this work thing. And let's say, I come to you, I got my hands in the air. I have no idea what to do with my life. I don't know what I'm passionate about. Where would you start someone like me?
So a lot of the clients we work with are in exactly that boat. They say, Claire, Ellie, Creative Career Solutions team, I have no idea what's next, but it's not this, right? Where I'm at right now, I can't stay here any longer. Whether that be environmental issues, financial issues, they need to make a move with their family, they just are in a toxic work environment. There are lots of reasons why I think people feel isolated and kind of set afloat on an island to go figure things out. We do also work with people who have a general idea where they're going. They just don't know how to get there. But I think that's the piece, that's the commonality of when you're making a career transition, it can be a really lonely and isolating road, right? You're working through the emotional piece and the logistical piece and the I have no idea what's next piece. So it is a larger process, but to boil it down to a couple key elements, we usually start in what we call discovery phase. This, as Ellie already talked about too, is usually one or a handful of conversations to really help our clients dial down to what are your giftings? What are your passion areas? We kind of treat those separately as what are you innately wired to do? What have you learned to do? And secondly, how do you want to apply that? Who do you want to help? Is it a population of people? Is it some sort of mission? Is it some sort of advocacy? Is it that I talked with someone recently and they said, I don't know how this fits. I love theme parks. I am passionate about going. I want to, like, if I could work for Disney, that would be it, right? And so what we typically do with that piece of the discovery is we say, okay, all limitations off the table, financial limitations, maybe it's skill set limitations. What drives you? And what we find oftentimes is there are very clear ties between these areas of giftings and what they're doing now and these areas of giftings and passions and what they're looking to do. And so what we typically see is that a lot of clients would come to us like you and say, I don't know, I have no idea. Usually when we start uncovering those layers, we find that they're like these really sweet dreams and stories and narratives they've already started on. They just need someone to come alongside them and say, see, you were right. Your thinking was right. And so we never want to rush that process because there are a lot of logistical things that come after that. Like, great, you now have a direction. Now what happens? So from there, once we've established a couple of key areas, let's say it's, maybe 2 specific career verticals. From there, we would work with them to create their professional narrative. So do you have a resume that clearly articulates where you've been and where you're going? Do you have a cover letter that helps seam those pieces together? Do you have a LinkedIn profile where you can do some professional networking as well as applying for jobs? Let's say that you find a couple places to apply for new opportunities and then you get a call back. All of the previous steps worked, right? But then people say, how do I translate this to an actual conversation with a real human? So we'll work through interview prep all the way through negotiation strategy, offer letter negotiations, things like that to make sure, do these opportunities fit the non-negotiables and the goals that you had set way at the beginning? And so we're big fans of like metaphorical pen and paper type planning. We like to see the mile markers along their story for the clients we work with, that they can say, okay, I have this opportunity or I have multiple opportunities. We're able to go back to the early days of this is why you started. does this solve the problem of right now? Is this a bridge role? Or are we just excited about an opportunity? Maybe that's valid to step into the opportunity, maybe it's not. So there's a lot that goes into the fleshing out of that strategy, but it all starts with those initial conversations of really giving clients the confidence to step into their giftings, understand them, know where they're heading. And then from there, the rest of the process moves at a fairly quick clip.
Where does personality fit into all of that? I mean, the Myers-Briggs is big. There's the DISC. There's the Enneagram, which personally I've never been able to figure out how, like, what number I am in the wing, and maybe I just don't understand it, but I've tried. Where do you guys have assessments? Do you factor in personality? How does that fit into the bigger picture?
We use a number of different tools to assess personality. Some of the ones that we recommend, though, most readily are going to be the Clifton Strengths Finder. That's really nice because the output is a handful of actual skills that you could list on a resume. They're really nice to get the brainstorming going if you have no idea kind of where you are. The second one that we really like is through Myers-Briggs. It's called the Strong Interest Inventory. There are a number of different kind of subcategories that you can use through this type of reporting. So if you're a college student, they have one specifically for young professionals. They have one specifically for career transitions. So even if you've been in a specific career for a handful of months or years, it really does a great job of breaking down how your personality weighs up against other people who take the same assessment and where they typically live in terms of their careers, right? So it's kind of this little hexagon thing, and typically you have opposites. So it's kind of like the Enneagram in that way, right? If anyone's figured out how to use that, hit us up, because we're not sure either.
I haven't figured it out yet.
But what's really nice about the Strong Interest Inventory is that depending on what quadrant you fall in, right? So maybe you're scientific versus artistic. Maybe you're critical thinking versus more fluid thinking. You're able to really dial into, okay, other people who took this assessment were mainly in science-related fields or mainly within helping-related professions. And so it's nice that in the report itself, it breaks down a handful of career paths that might be of interest. So we've started using this in the last year or so with some of our clients, and it's been really interesting. People are often saying, this makes sense now that we've talked about it, right? Some of the underlying key skills are still there, which very much aligns with what we do too. I don't know, Ellie, if you have any other thoughts from your psychology background on other assessments that you like or that we've used.
I'm not as familiar with different assessments. I think as far as just personality, I think personality is a factor in everything. And I think these tools really help figure out how your personality can be a factor. But personality is funny because it's also not really a limitation. I mean, if you look at different teams in different companies, you'll find similarities between people on the same team. But you also see that a lot of teams that are really strong have people who maybe their personalities are very diverse. And so I think personality can help you, but it's ultimately more finding a place that doesn't make you feel like you're unfit or incapable. I think personality differences can help you grow and adapt as a team, or as an individual professional. But you don't, like we've kind of been talking about, you don't want to force yourself into something that drains you. So I think personality can be used as a tool, and there are tools to help you figure out how your personality can fit. But I also don't think it's necessarily like a limiting factor. Just because you might not be great at certain skills doesn't mean you can't do jobs 1, 2, and 3 or ABC or what. I think your personality can help, but it's not a limiting factor, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Kind of related to that, I want to talk about this idea of passion. So some people, I guess you'd call them, they're more melancholic. They're more, is that a word? Melancholic. And they're not so passionate. They're not so out there. But passion kind of is this phrase we throw around. Like, what are you passionate about? Like, someone came up to me years ago, someone I just met, barely knew, and they came up and they're like, what's your passion? I was like, well, I don't know. I felt kind of guilty that I didn't have one singular answer for that. But a lot of books about passion, find your passion, the passion test, so I have a lot of thoughts on passion. And my main one is, if you know you're passionate about something, my 3-word counseling advice would be to go for it. Maybe they need someone to walk with them and help them overcome obstacles. But I don't know, if you're passionate about something you can make money on, I don't know, maybe those aren't the kind of people that would come to career counseling. Maybe, or maybe they just need a little bit of, gentle pushing out the door to go do that. So what's your thoughts on passion? Because I feel like maybe curiosity is better than passion. It's more sustainable. But then, as I've been interviewing people, friends and acquaintances, people that I don't know, there are some people who are really passionate about their job. So can you please bring clarity to all of what I just said?
I like that. Clarity. No pun intended. I think passion's I feel like that's such a big topic. You could talk about passion for hours, just because you can be really passionate about the dinner you're having, or really passionate about the mission in life that you're doing. And I think a lot of Christians, I like, as a Christian, I hear a lot of, what's your calling? What's your calling in life? And I think that really, that's what kind of scared me, is because my first job out of college was a really good sales and marketing job. And I was financially, it was a great opportunity. It was teaching me a lot about the professional world. I was learning how to professionally have conversations with people, interacting with all different kinds of people. How does a business operate? All these things that I was were really helping me and building me. But I kept thinking, this can't be my calling. I'm not enjoying myself like I thought I would when I was living out my calling. How am I supposed to figure that out when I'm waiting? I have to wait for my paycheck to pay my rent. And so I think passion is more, I like to think of it as more kind of the driver for those questions that we've been talking about of, what are non-negotiables? What are you good at? What do you like? What's something, do you need structure? Those are also similar. What things you're passionate about are kind of more, like guardrails of, okay, I'm really passionate about this. So this is kind of going to turn me this way. And I have no passion for that. So I'm going to maybe stay away from roles or careers or callings or whatever you want to call it that really involve that. And so I think, again, passion is something I think that we're given. It's a God-given thing. And I think they're little hints as to where to continue to take our lives. But I also think there is that trap of calling. And once you reach your calling, you did it, check. God hid it from you. He just gave you passions, little things here and there, and skills. And it's this big, Easter egg hunt your whole life to figure it out. And then once you get there, check. I think it's more that doesn't feel like sustainable. Kind of like what you were saying of, and so I feel like looking at your passions more from a perspective of, okay, I know for me, all I know is I'm passionate about people. I love having conversations. I love having surface level and really deep conversations. I love it all. So people, to me, that was that's so broad. What do you do with that? So that's why I picked psychology, because you study people. But again, I went into sales and marketing, and that was working with people, but I still didn't feel like that's where I needed to end up ultimately. And so again, it's just that guide. If I knew I wanted to do something that was interacting with people, but that only limited it by about 5% of jobs on the planet. So again, coming back to it, I think passion is little passions. They're your guide.
I think one thing that Ellie just said too, a metaphor that I heard and I think resonates really true with the clients that we work with, especially believers, where you're like, okay, what is my calling? I'm at a crossroads, or I've been at a crossroads for a long time. What is my calling? And I think oftentimes we treat finding your calling like a pin the tail on the donkey of okay, well, maybe it's it. Yeah. Did they hit it? Right. And I don't think that's what God has called us to. I think he's to Ellie's point, like left us breadcrumbs and put people in our life and situations in our life that help refine and really sharpen the skills that he's given us and the talents he's given us and the calling, right, that he has for us. But I also think that when we're talking specifically about jobs, which is like a tangible, this is a calling decision, we oftentimes have to look at, I think your calling and your passion can develop over time. I don't think that just because this is the role that you're choosing right now, that this is going to be the only thing you ever do. Hopefully not. I think that we're called to grow and adapt and evolve and learn and have passions that continue to evolve within what Ellie said, like these guardrails of kind of a path. And so I think that's one thing that we talk a lot about with our clients of, you're not going to make the wrong decision as long as you're being discerning, you know who you are, you understand where you're going, and you have the right framework to make good decisions. You're analytical and not making decisions based only on emotion, but you're also not ruling out the way it feels, right? The gut feeling of this is just right, or God has absolutely placed this into my path. It'd be crazy not to do it, right? So to your point, Eric, of go for it, I think absolutely, but I think there are also some limiting factors for a lot of people of what that actually looks like in their like very tangible career decisions. I don't know if that makes sense, but so I think it's pulling it all back around to, is this the right next step for you? Is this a step towards the path of your calling? Yes or no? And if you chose wrong, great. You probably didn't, but if you did, wonderful. We'll just take another step back, right? Based on what you know now.
Yeah, and what I've seen too in my research on this is that people develop passion. They find a skill that they didn't know that they had, or find a gift that turns into a skill, and then like, wait, like I really like this. So have you guys seen that case where someone's like, wait, I've been doing this thing. It's kind of a random thing, but I really like doing it.
Yeah, I think you can find, and what's cool about that is you can find it anywhere. Like some people find it, you know, when they start their jobs, they're like, oh, I really like working with numbers in this way. And some people are like, I was at a baseball game and realized I really like, whatever, eating pretzels and watching baseball, and whatever part you can pull from that to figure out what to do next and realize what you're passionate about. And sometimes passions also, maybe, I don't want to say like die, but maybe fade or change over time. Like you are allowed, again, I think it's that thing of like, you don't have to be miserable, and you're also not stuck, and you can change and adapt, and you're allowed to say, hey, I was really passionate about this, but I'm burnt out. And I now discovered that this is really exciting and new, and I can use the skills I like learned from this season to go here. And what Claire said of the fact that, you know, there's not really a wrong decision, because one, I think as Christians, we get a little bit of because we're not in control anyway. And everything is always, you know, worked for our good. But also, just because you maybe took a job that you thought was going to be really awesome and it turns out doesn't feel like it's really for you, you're learning something. You're working next to somebody that's different than someone you've ever worked with, or you're trying to do something that you've never done before, and it's making you and forcing you to step into something that might be uncomfortable, but help you grow. So passions, again, they can change, they can adapt, they can fade, and then they can be reborn. It's all part of, I think, the process.
Well, and Eric, to your point, and Ellie, kind of piggybacking off what you just said too, I heard on a podcast recently, and I thought this was so well put. They said that most people are passionate about things that they're good at, right? It's easy to be passionate about things that you're good at, but you're not good at things unless you practice them. So you're passionate about things you're good at things you practice. And so I think, to your point, there often is that element of when you're working these muscles, you're developing these skill sets. I think you have the opportunity to become more passionate about them as you begin to get more experienced in them. And so I think that's something we do see a lot. People are like, I'm so passionate about this. Sometimes we see people who are really passionate about things that they have no experience in. And that's a really fun process of, how do we get you in this space to get more exposure to that area? How do we get you in front of people, within people that are also doing the same thing and passionate, motivated by the same thing. But usually we see people that are passionate about things that they're already good at or working towards. They're going to work harder for it. They're likely going to make more money doing it, right? Because it's something that's within their sweet spot. And so that might be the bridge too, to transition. Well, I'm really passionate about this, uncovering the why. I think sometimes it's a fluke or on a whim, or something that God has really innately placed in your life for seemingly no reason, but usually there is one, you come to discover later. Or the latter, which I think is people are passionate about things that they're already doing, or kind of giftings that they already have in their life, we often see.
Right. Yeah. And I read about this guy who started to like cut salmon. He was like a salmon filleter. And he was so passionate about it. He's just cutting salmon all day. Loved to make the perfect slice. And I was like, okay, I guess, you can't limit people. There's always some job that you might not know that you'll be passionate about. What about obstacles? What do you think is the main? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot: fear of change, financial. What are some of the main obstacles that you guys see for why people aren't like when people come to you and they start this process? I would say probably the first obstacle is like what you said, that people don't even know that someone like you exists. So that's a huge obstacle. So let's say they've overcome that, and as you meet with them, what are some of the obstacles that you see?
I see a lot of I don't have time or I don't have like the mental capacity to even go there. I mean, a lot of times people are, a lot of us, we were talking about this, really busy. The idea of taking on a project like this, of putting time and effort into yourself to figure out like, what am I passionate about? Like asking those questions sometimes and coming to those answers can take time. Not only that, but even just if you work with the career coach like this, like the process, depending on what you need, can take time. There's opportunity for it to be quick, but there's also sometimes investing in yourself takes time and it takes effort. And a lot of us, if we're trying to get out of a role that we want to get out of because we're drained and it's too much time, the idea of plugging in more time, putting in more time to invest in ourselves to get out of that situation is almost like, oh, I don't have the time. I don't have the energy to do that. And I think it's just one of those things that, when you get to that point in life of deciding, maybe I sacrifice time here, maybe I sacrifice energy here in order to do what I need to do to figure out what is my next step. How can I invest in myself in this way?
Right.
So good, Ellie. I think in addition to like the investment, whether that be time or resources or capacity, some of the hurdles that we see our clients have to jump over are knowing themselves and knowing how to communicate their story. I think that's a huge process, and it's really hard to look objectively at yourself, right? You're tied up in emotions and maybe insecurities and failures and successes and tying value to things that we can also just look at as fact, right? And so doing that with someone else, I think, is really helpful, but I think it's a really daunting process to be like, oh, I have to look inward and figure out who I am, but I also have to share that with someone that I don't know really well. And so we see that, but I think probably a larger overarching just things that prevent people from making career transitions on top of time and investment, knowing who they are and where they're going, is oftentimes fear of uncertainty. We see a lot of times when you can't control the whole situation, right? Because we're human, that's super scary. What's the saying? It's like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. I think we see that a lot of times when people who say, well, my situation's really bad and I can't stay here anymore, but I don't know what's next. And so being able to help build the confidence of our clients, working them towards the edge of that bridge and saying, okay, we're going to test your parachute and we're going to check out and make sure you have all the resourcing and the tooling you need. You know how it works. You know how to pull the lever, and then walking them to the edge of that canyon and being able to say, okay, we can make a jump and you know you're going to be safe. I think getting people up to that point is huge. And then they realize when they make the jump and their parachute works and all of this work is coming to fruition, it's the best thing ever. And oftentimes we hear clients say, why did I not do this 10 years ago or 5 years ago? Or as soon as I got this job, how did I even get here? But my point in saying, I think getting people up and prepared and ready to make the jump, it's really challenging. It takes a whole lot of vulnerability on there and a whole lot of courage on there and to do that. But we often see when they're resourced well, when they're prepared well, they get to live into a whole new calling, of a new career path or a new job or a new opportunity of impact.
So what's a success story? Is there, as may not want to give the exact specifics, but do you have a general success story? Someone who came in, didn't know what they wanted to do, and lo and behold, after however many sessions, they were doing something that they found amazing.
We have so many good ones. Yeah. Ellie and I get to celebrate, and our team gets to celebrate with clients all the time, whether the success is just that they were able to achieve a promotion. They got up the courage to, approach their employers and say, I know my value and this is what I need, right? This is what I can contribute and this is what I need. Like, that is a huge success, even though I think in the macro view that feels small. I feel like some of our biggest ones are the ones who are like, I've never loved what I wanted to do and I've done it for 25 years and now all bets are off. We're doing something new. And so I feel like those are probably the most dramatic. I know Ellie knows this story well, but pretty early on in Clarity Career Solutions history, we had the opportunity to work with this gal who was like a 25-year vet in creative direction. So her whole life had been graphic design and creative marketing and at some really large organizations, like leading firms in the industry. So on paper, her background is fantastic. She's done a lot. She's highly accomplished, highly educated. In meeting with her, though, she was just desperate for a change. And I remember asking, like, you have all of this experience in this space, like, how amazing. And she goes, well, yeah, but I've hated every minute of it, right? And so in that moment, to be able to really sit with someone in the heartbreak of, I have a 25-year career in something that I was too afraid to leave. And now I am 2.5 decades later at midway through my life. What do I do now? And so we had started to kind of uncover, what are you passionate about? What are you called towards? And she was like, I don't know how this fits, but I love animals. I could be with animals all the time. I've always thought about working with animals, but doesn't pay the bills. And also I don't really know what that would look like. I'd have to go back to school. So for her, we met with her over a period of time, set her strategy and reset her strategy and reset her strategy as she continued to evolve. A couple of years later, she's a certified animal behaviorist. She works with organizations all over the place. She utilizes her creative skills and her people skills to advertise and advocate for all of these really cool animal wellness organizations. And so what was really unique about her story, and I caught up with her recently, and she's so happy. She's like, I cannot believe that I spent my 25-year career in this, and I could have been doing this my whole life. But what was really sweet about her is being able to say, your previous career was not for waste. You're using some of those skill sets. You're using some of those muscles in an entirely different environment. But I guarantee it's made her way better at what she does. And she's learned some new skills along the way. So I feel like that's a really dramatic process. And that was obviously a couple years in the making, given her need to upskill, reskill, get some new education, transition out. But we see stories like that all the time. And I think that it was the confidence piece that I mentioned, getting her prepared. She's tested, she's upskilled, she's ready to jump, made the jump sustainably, and was able to make that transition in a really, really transformational way.
That's so cool. And that's the thing is, you can't live in the past. You can't live in the regret, because you don't know what God has done. How He's going to use your past in your experiences, and like you were saying, none of those skills are wasted. They will come into play at some point. So I don't know, we don't always get answers to our whys, but it is amazing to see how God uses our career path to take us to someplace new, and good for her. Better late than never, right?
For sure.
So just to kind of like wrap this up, I want to know what you two like most about your jobs.
I love that question. I think, like I said earlier, I have always just loved to be around people, but not just be around people, but get to have like conversations. I love learning stories, and that's what I get to do. Is I get to hear people's stories. I get to talk to people all day about their passions, their skills, and learn what their path looked like to bring them to where they're at. And then I get to help them put together this puzzle of, okay, here's your passions, here's your skills, here's your background. Where do you want to go? How are we going to get you there? What's the first step? And walking them through things that might feel insignificant or mundane. But whether I work with someone who's a barista or a sales assistant or a business owner, there's something so powerful in every story. And similar, I mean, Claire and I could talk about success stories all day, just because like getting that moment where you talk to someone and they're like, oh yeah, I just did this. And you're like, that's a huge deal. And let me tell you why. And let me tell you how that's going to fit. And even if it has something to do with they say something and then we, return a resume and the bullet is like, oh my, yeah, that's me. I didn't know that was a big deal. All I did was, sell coffee at a coffee shop. But yeah, I guess I was one of the first employees. So I guess I did build that. And you're like, you did. Yeah, that was you. And what I'm doing, we're not, creating a story for them. We're just telling it in a way that meets recruitment requirements and resume requirements, but also just shows off and not exaggerates, but emphasizes the power in people's story, both personally and professionally. You see personal effects just as much as you see the professional effects, and that is so fun. And like that's the beauty of getting to hear stories all day, is you get to walk with people through the tough and through the really big celebrations, and everything in between. And then working those little puzzle pieces and the technical stuff in between is also fun for me too. So,
well, I can see your passion. So it's infectious. So if anyone gets anything out of this at all, is that it is possible to like what you do. What about you, Claire?
So one thing I want to add on to Ellie's story, Ellie is such an advocate for people. I will never forget fairly early on when she started working with us, she was chatting with, either one of our clients or one of your contacts. He was a young professional, a young gentleman kind of starting his career, and he'd worked at a grilled cheese food truck. And I remember Ellie was really trying to extract a value of like, what did you do? What were your key metrics? What is like your big why? And he's like, I don't know. I just worked with a grilled cheese food truck for the summer. And I remember Ellie was so committed to being like, no, you created new processes. You delivered quality goods to a customer. You were able to balance priorities, right? And so that's one thing that I've seen in Ellie. And I think her background of understanding people, commitment and passion for people, but also in solving problems, putting those puzzle pieces together is so apparent. And I think that's something that our entire team really embodies, right? And so for me, I absolutely agree 100% with what Ellie had to say. I think additionally, being able to be both a coach and a cheerleader for people, depending on what they need in that moment, is such a fulfilling thing, because you recognize that while we're just talking about their career or their next promotion or potential new application or those bullets on a resume that we need to really refine and tweak, right? There's a potential for legacy changing impact, right? Because if someone is really working in their space, their sweet spot, they're fulfilled, likely they're going to go and find that and have the confidence to find that in other areas, right? In other spaces, in their families and their churches and their communities. And so I love getting to be a small part of that process. They're doing the work. We're just here to provide those bumpers like Ellie talked about and help them get down the lane. But they're the ones that are doing the transformational work. And so, like I said, getting to be that cheerleader when they need no, this is really powerful. That work you did at the grilled cheese food truck, awesome, right? But also being able to coach and say, how do we make this impactful? How do we communicate your story? How do you communicate who you are in this space and where you're going? And so it's such a cool thing. We get to see passionate people who are passionate about crazy things all the time. This is one that Ellie and I talk about a lot. We had a couple clients actually, that were metrologists. Didn't know what that was until we worked with him. It's the calibration of lasers, right?
Oh, I was thinking of
about lasers.
Meteorologist? That's not a meteorologist. I was like, I know what that is. Actually, I have no idea. Okay.
We thought the same thing until we learned more that we didn't recognize any of the words he was saying. We're like, are you speaking in English? What are you speaking? Right. But how cool to get to walk alongside people who are crazy passionate and lit on fire by stuff that you're like, thank you for doing that. Sweet baby Jesus. I'm so glad that I'm not calibrating lasers. I'd be horrid. But we need you. We need that. And so getting to be a part of that, kind of tying in the story of, you've been gifted with unique skill sets and really valuable traits and personalities, and you've been equipped so well. We need you to operate in that space, right? Me, you, our community, our world. And so getting to be that advocate and that little kick in the butt when they need it, and coach to kind of move them down the lane, because ultimately they're the ones tracking towards their goals. We're just the one helping. It's such a cool process.
That's amazing. I wish I had both of you when I was going to college and I was in a major that I didn't like, and my academic advisor just, maybe met with her once a year and no direction. Yeah. No direction.
Oh, yeah.
So, sounds like you guys have plenty of work out there, plenty of people. Thanks so much, Claire and Ellie. You guys have been, I have learned a ton, and I can see your passion. I can see that it's not just a job, but you guys really, really have a heart to help people. Thank you so much, Claire and Ellie. This has been enlightening for me. I have learned a ton. I can hear your passion. I know it's not just a job for you, that you love working with people. And this has been a great talk. I didn't say your website before, so I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it. So you can get more information about what they do. Maybe you listening, some of you need this. I know that I did when I was in college. Go to claritycareersolutions.com. Again, thank you so much, Claire and Ellie, for talking with me today.
Thank you, Eric. It's been awesome.
Thank you.